The moderator, I am sorry, I may not be pronouncing names correctly. We must have Mr. Koliwe Majama from MISA. We will start now by agreeing on a definition of digital transformation. Uh, Ladies first.
Commerce and business. And digital transformation is the process of providing internet access for as many people as possible, preferably for everybody, making sure that access is affordable and that the speed is fast enough for them to do their business and get the information that they want.
Thank you.
Merci, je vais parler français. C'est Mawaki Chango donc. La transformation.
The digital transformation, this how we call it. The digital transformation it's about the is linked to the digital economy. They are interconnected because in the transformation, sure, we have to think of the economy as well. And that's why we have a critical level at the technology that is a cross-cutting issue among all activities in this field, and that requires an activity and also to put into consideration the whole issue. We have to work together to manage this on a daily basis, and that's why a small group of persons adopted the technology, but it's not sufficient to have the digital transformation. We have to see how the society in its whole has a change and how it will work together, and how all the components will contribute to that.
or shifting offline practices into the online economy. So it's not exactly a reinvention of the wheel, but actually an extension of practices that have been happening offline into the online space.
Merci. Je crois que j'ai bien fait de commencer par ça. Parce que vous voyez que nous avons diverses interprétations de ce qu'est l'économie numérique et de ce qu'est la transformation numérique. Toutefois, j'ai retenu de ce qui vient d'être dit que d'abord,
These are different definitions of digital transformation. Based on what was said, the digital transformation and digital economy are closely related. We cannot speak about a digital economy without digital transformation, and we cannot speak about digital transformation without speaking about economic transformation. But this is a part of the diversity of activities covered by digital economy. We feel it in everyday life. This phenomenon is well established. There is a diversity in the sectors related to digital economy. Naturally enough, there are differences in views. For this reason, there is a diversity. Before we listen to the panelists' views, we need to ask, how can we achieve a digital transformation? I feel deeply that we will be mistaken if we imagine that there is a big difference between digital transformation and economic transformation. How can we bridge the gap? In what sectors do we see it? We see it among youth, in health, in education. I think the efforts that will be made in the future will take into account this diversity. Uh, the process will continue until the last link in the chain will be reached. So please express your views. What is the best way to achieve digital transformation? This is what we will listen to from our visitors and panelists.
In their spaces. So, for example, if you look at people who operate within the informal economy, what is it exactly that they're making use of when it comes to the digital tools? And do we need to bring them into a way that we define as digital, the way which we think should be done? So I think digital transformation can be achieved by understanding what it is that people are currently doing with the technologies that they have and building the necessary capacity to ensure that when we've reached full transformation, no one gets left behind.
Really short. Well, first, my interest in all of this is that I come from a public policy perspective, so that's the way I will approach these subjects. First of all, any innovation, whether it's purely based on human imagination or it's technical or technological, starts from human circumstances, human needs. Okay, so every innovation has a social course. It starts with human circumstances, it starts with human needs and challenges, and also it resolves into human needs. Okay, so the question here is, how does that process unfold for innovation to become effective in realizing the value that it's set off to create? What need to be taken into account? What need to happen in terms of social setting, in terms of social parameters? So now, I would like to propose a model, quick model of innovation to all the way to application, etc. I see the innovation starting, so being the first occurrence, and from that innovation, you have like two tracks. You have the track that is like piloting the innovation, like implementing with a number of earlier adopters. And so the inventors try to follow what is the result of that piloting and make some adjustments, some technical tweaks. But also you have the policy track, which are the social or socio-political track, because then you have some segment will adapt that innovation. And at the end of the process, you obtain a large adoption by most of the society. So as I say, I'm interested in policy, public policy. What I'll be focusing on is what the policymaker need to do, and the rest of the society, the rest of the stakeholders that are involved or interested in policy making need to do in order to have that value manifest be realized into the society. You want me to develop that part now, or I can?
I think that we have better to go through opinions about what to do, and then, of course, we will go through some details in what is proposed.
Okay.
Alan?
I think the internet gives us a fantastic opportunity for education, and I think that is key. So there are vast stores of information out there, and with access to the internet, with online training courses, people can learn by themselves. And for that to happen, we need to have affordable access. And so I would say that we need to improve the speeds, the bandwidth of our networks. We need to loosen regulations to encourage competition, because competition tends to lower costs. And we need to encourage links across borders between countries, because that too will improve performance and in the long run will reduce costs.
Thank you.
For me, how digital transformation can be achieved, beyond the technical side, I'm just going to look at it from the civil society point of view. It is mainly building communities. And to build communities, we rely on what the internet is giving to us. We need to bring this forward to the communities, that things are happening quicker with this concept, with the help of internet. For example, for a layman to go and apply for a license, he can use the internet. So for me, digital transformation will only happen if we can educate the communities and build communities.
Awareness.
Thank you.
Awareness, isn't it?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. And like I said earlier, I'm a media rights activist, and I work with the Media Institute of Southern Africa. Um, what I do realize is that we do frame digital transformation like it's some systematic methodological presentation of technologies to us. So what you find is we have a very reactionary way of dealing with the reality that people have access to the internet. So whilst we do appreciate that there would be the need to, you know, as Alan speaks to issues around access and affordability, but there is still the reality of traditional means of accessing information. And within that framework, that people still do negotiate and renegotiate the way that they would be able to survive within a digital economy, within the realities of, you know, the risks of being online and having access to the internet, but also I think in terms of how it can not be achieved because it is already there and it is a reality, but how it can be more effective is the level to which everybody is able to actually define the extent to which the access to the internet has transformed their very existence as an individual.
Thank you. Let me just summarize. So we talked about profiles and capacity building. We talked about public policies and innovation. We talked about access. We talked about awareness and access. I think that this is a good amount of this. Oh yes, this is a mic. No, okay. I think this is a good start to and a real capital in terms of food for thought. Before going through deeper discussions, I like better to have a reaction from the room. What do you think about this? Hey, do we have something else to add as food for thought? They said it all? Someone wants to, please. The microphone, please, yes. No, they have another one.
Thank you for the initial input. My name is Brock. I'm a researcher from Research ICT Africa in Cape Town, South Africa. A lot of positive connotation that's attached to digital transformation. And I'd like to pose the thought that perhaps we have a positive connotation with the word transformation that we assume it's for good. If we try and look at it, if we problematize it and throw all the connotation we can on both terms, digital and transformation, perhaps it could just be the transforming of existing solutions and positivity, positive results, as well as existing problems such as inequality, abuse, harassment, all sorts of things that take place in the offline world that could now also take place in the online world. And perhaps the digital transformation refers simply to the digitization of existing societal benefits and societal harms.
Are you talking precisely about the change in behavior? Change in behavior?
Not necessarily change in behavior, just change in platform on which the behavior is carried out.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so then, please.
Thank you very much for sharing all these nice ideas about transformation. I would like the panelists really to elaborate a bit more on awareness. Awareness is becoming more and more fuzzy. Awareness means different things to different people. If you're talking about the general public, that's good. But I think Africa needs awareness of decision makers at all levels of what needs to happen to enable the ICT mobilization and digitalization of societies in Africa. For example, if you're talking about new trade platform, they need to know that the trade platform need to be accessible using smartphones and other channels. I have high hopes for the African population. They are very, whether literate or not literate, they are very eager to use the technology. I'm sure it is contagious also. I've heard about cases of fishermen in Central Africa almost 20 years ago, using SMS to trade and to sell their fish. So I'm not fearful really of the population uptake on the transformation. I'm more concerned of decision makers making the right decisions in investing in infrastructure that would make this really not reaching the information society by accident, but it would be availing the high-speed internet with decent applications in various services to the general public. So awareness among decision makers. Thank you.
Merci. Je ne peux être que d'accord avec vous et je voudrais plutôt modifier un peu l'axe de votre intervention. Il s'agit davantage d'anticipation et une anticipation qui est beaucoup plus requise des leaders.
The pivot of the intervention is that there is need for transformation. And it must be done quickly if we want to succeed in this transformation. This transformation must be clear in the mind of decision makers in order to reach a common ground whereby people can understand the matter and have a command of it.
The digital transformation is happening without the authorization of anyone and also without the help of the decision makers. Social media and over the top
To move quickly in order to make digital transformation happen quickly and deeply. We should not suffice ourselves with calling for achieving digital transformation. We need to keep a momentum for national digital transformation.
Some of us intended to say in the second part. So it's good to have an interactive session, but also let's not say we didn't say what we didn't have the opportunity to say yet. Okay. So for me, social processes and structures will shape, and in some ways are already shaping digital transformation as they have been doing elsewhere. Now we are talking about Africa here, right? So it's about, as I think we all agree that it's not about only about pure technology happening and then, it's like it falls from the sky and we have to embrace it, but it's the social processes and structure will shape them. And to do so, I mean, I have to observe that the same question apply more largely, more broadly to institutions. So the question we are facing here is how can we or do we shape our institutions? Because technology actually is largely also an institution. As I say, it just doesn't happen by itself. So the question is, how can we shape technology as we will shape an institution? And what I will observe from that is that the challenge we have in Africa is that the way we usually shape our institution does not account sufficiently for African experiences. We generally are latecomers, and we tend to just replicate what is being done elsewhere. But we need to pay attention to how we as a citizen of this region can appropriate the technology. It's not something that is given. We have to figure out how to do it. And to do so, we need research. That's my third point. We need research. As I mentioned research yesterday, I asked a question actually about research, and I didn't get a satisfactory answer as far as I'm concerned. The problem was not about agreeing whether we need research or not. I think everybody will agree. Someone say in the panel this morning about digital economy, the role of universities in Palo Alto or in Silicon Valley. None of these innovations are happening without research at the base. You can say apply research, R&D research, or fundamental research, whatever. Even R&D research at some point benefit from fundamental research. You need to do research. It's a whole way of doing things. You just don't collect anecdotal evidence or a catalog of best practice and best practices, and you conclude that you know what needs to be known in order to carry forward. So that's very important, and we need to figure out how to fund research, because when you do that, it's not enough to say we agree we need research. When NSF, the National Science Foundation, is operates, they make announcements. They call solicitations, right? And the researchers draw a proposal and submit them. And those solicitations come from a program. Someone has thought out what we need to do in our society in order to make progress, and then they call on those who are capable of carrying out those research or those research efforts to submit ideas and to do it. If you say, well, we agree on research, just give us a good idea and we will fund it, that's not enough. You don't do research on ad hoc manner. You have the institution, again, I come back to institution, you have to have the institutions for everyone to know that the society that you belong to support that kind of research, and they have solicitation once in a while, and then they can go and look for good ideas and come back to you.
Merci beaucoup d'avoir fait la distinction entre
Thank you very much. The innovation which you spoke about at the beginning is an integral important part. But it's different. We are in Africa, and in Africa we mix and confuse research with innovation. They are different, and there's a point that I would like to add with regard to what His Excellency the Ambassador said. One of the recommendations I would like to make here is that there must be a space for an exchange of information between decision makers and innovators so that we can share best practices and be able to know what's happening in Rwanda, for example. And maybe others don't know what will happen at our end. So we need to share experiences, especially with regard to decision makers and policy makers.
Decision makers. I come from an organization that its mandate was built to actually build the necessary evidence to ensure efficient ICT policy from an African perspective. Where the challenge has been raised by Mawaki, where someone comes and gives you a mandate and then, or they simply ask, give us a research topic and we'll fund it. But there's a need to understand what is currently going on the ground. And for us, our mandate has been to ensure that the research we provide that will allow for policymakers to ensure the right policies is public interest and pro-poor. Because I think that's an important conversation when it comes to digital transformation, that who will be benefiting from this digital transformation. And if we don't have awareness raising that actually highlights that there are certain people that will miss out from this digital transformation, all we'll be doing is having digital transformation that will benefit a very small proportion of people who've already always had access. So I think that's where it's important to provide the necessary research that will be then given to policymakers and raise awareness of this is how you can better the African economy?
Merci. Madame.
Thank you. I'll just pick up on the point on public interest, and I think it also relates to over the top services and zero rating. I think the challenge that we have now is just the conflict around whether or not a zero rated service is good for a specific community. And what information do you actually find as a zero rated service? Is it public health issues? Is it education? What is it exactly that we would deem of public interest? And I think what is also unfortunate is the reality of the decision or lawmakers in the obscurity of defining what is of public interest. So you have on social media, individual social media accounts where you have individual bloggers, and I've been privileged to meet some African bloggers here today who actually do have conversations of national, economic, and social interest that do have a bearing on governance. So this is where the conflict is now in terms of what exactly do we define as public interest and who has a right to begin a conversation of public interest. Then we begin to filter into conversations around regulating social media. Should we even be talking about regulating social media?
Merci Madame d'avoir évoqué cette question.
Well, we can have extensive discussion on this point later. It's food for thought. Then we'll discuss it later. As our colleague has said, with regard to research, there is a need for conducting research, of course. This is of paramount importance to the stakeholders. And to achieve digital transformation, we need the participation of the entire local community.
Communities that have traditionally been at a disadvantage. Speakers of minority languages need education in their native language, in their mother tongue. We shouldn't force them to use colonial languages for their education. Women have traditionally been kind of excluded from the technology sector, and so we need to address that by special programs. I thought I had a third example, but it slipped my mind now. Sorry.
You have something to add?
Yeah, I think what is critical also in respect of research itself is the reality, what actually is in our ICT policies in terms of raising that awareness. I know quite a number of governments are on a drive to set up community information centers, but to what extent are they realistically something that is accessible, as Alan says, to the marginal communities? And is there accountability around, uses of, especially the universal services funds? And I know, for instance, from the country I come from in Zimbabwe, we've never actually had, just an idea of what exactly that fund is going to. So when you talk about digital transformation, research, best practices, I think there also needs to be levels of accountability. We know what the best practices are. We set up community information centers. They're not well serviced. No one accesses them. We know that service providers are contributing something to increase, people's access, but we don't actually know how much is going into that awareness raising.
more transparency, more accountability. It is clear. We need that in Africa. La façon dont je vais poursuivre, je crois qu'elle va nous permettre d'arriver à des entendements communs sur le choix.
There are common agreements and views. In fact, what you have said shows that there are different points of view, but there are common grounds. That's why I ask the participants to make interventions or to ask questions, please. Do you have questions? I'm addressing the participants. Do you have any questions to the panelists, please? In order to get more clarification on digital transformation. Do you have any questions, please? Mike, please. Mike to those who have questions, please.
Happening in Africa because some things were done. And if you take Nigeria case as an example, when the government liberalized the policy framework, brought in other stakeholders, and genuinely say, what do we do to move forward? And listened. Then an articulated document was fashioned, and that catapulted the process. And we were saying that we need to move beyond that level even now. And to move beyond that level, we are saying let there be more competition in government, how the government delivers services to the citizens. Okay, procurement process, let it be competitive. You can even emphasize local content, which the Nigerian government is pushing a lot in the oil sector and even in the other general sector. And the step we said should go to now is that let that special percentage of those big projects that should be executed by SMEs. Not only big companies take all the job, but let some portion be available for small businesses, and small businesses can apply to them. Just like Dr. Mawaki said, like the Science Foundation, National Science Foundation in the US, you look at where you have challenges, where the issues are, and then say, okay, we want to solicit for intervention or solutions to tackle this. I think that's the way we need to go. So we have this problem. Okay, how do we solve it? Give us proposal.
Merci.
That is the next level. Thank you.
Merci. Je crois que
Thank you. With regard to economic example, we try to deal with issues of interest. That is digital transformation in Africa. We are in the African Internet Governance Forum. We are African, so it is important to address this question, to choose the path that we should follow to achieve digital transformation in Africa. There is a diversity in the models. There are 54 models, and it's not easy to apply all of them. Hence, I would address the panelists and ask them to speak not on digital transformation, but on the right path, the best path to achieve digital transformation in Africa. We have listened to some views, but it is important to know how to converge. How can we agree on the methods and the path that we should take to achieve digital transformation in Africa? Do you, are there others who want to address also have questions? Can we take all the questions and then ask the panelists to answer?
Happening. The question is, shall we be passive and let it go like it is, or shall we do something to make it for the benefit of our population and especially of our youth?
May I ask you to be short because we are
yeah, short.
shortage of time.
I have 4 points, if you don't mind. Okay. Shall we regulate the social media? No, for sure, no. This is not. I don't think we have to think like this, but I think that it's something to do not at the level of regulation, but at the level of education in the schools. And I think that we need in the program of the schools, we need to make something, to do something to make our youth make use of the internet for their benefit, for the interest, for their interest, for the public interest, if I can say that. Yeah, the right, who has the right to initiate the debate? This is not the question. Anyone can initiate any debate. The most important thing is to have the right debate. Thank you.
Thank you. And the fourth one? You had 4 points. We've got 3. That's it. Thank you. Someone else?
Hello, this is Yolanda from South Africa. So the previous speaker just actually highlighted what I wanted to say. I feel like right now we're talking on a very high level in terms of policy, which is great. What needs to be done at a much more basic level in understanding how do we shape curriculum in high schools and primary schools. Thank you.
Thank you. More questions? Please.
Thank you very much. Well, I'd like to follow up on the suggestion that was mentioned here about being down to earth, about, for instance, education. Interestingly enough, 25 or 20 years ago, when the information society started to really spread across the globe, there was a mention of ICT in education. We need to approach it differently in 2017, especially in Africa, with limited resources, re-engineering, reinventing the education around ICTs is the way to go, in my view. We cannot think about sharing an old curriculum that was developed 20, 30 years ago and to develop it using an iPod or whatever channels that we have. And that's the challenge. And that's, I think, where we need to engage more educators who are familiar with delivering and developing courses online to students, and making sure that the multimedia or the ICT media is being used in innovative ways, not just the traditional ways using just ICT as a delivery channel. And that's, I think, I'd like to hear from the panel. And there was a mention of research. We need to research really and develop techniques that are indigenous, that are more relevant to African. And this is an area of research where the impact would be immediate. So I'd like to hear from the panelists about this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Merci, Monsieur l'Ambassadeur. Other questions? Other comments?
Thank you. My name is Rekia. I see enabling digital transformation in 3 axes. The first one, I think that we should put Africa in order, which means that we need to build IT infrastructure in all the countries. So because no solution will work without a good infrastructure, without any security, IT security, without all about IT infrastructure. The second axe is to capacitate Africa. When we say capacitate, we are looking for capacity building, awareness, research in different university link universities with all the business or agriculture or anything. And the last axis is on transformation. So we need now to bring innovative solution like education, bring IT in education, use IT in all what we are doing to change the way of doing. So these three axes, maybe we want the panel to tell us how to enable this in Africa.
Merci. Si nous en avons fini.
If we have another question or comment?
Just one.
Est-ce que je peux vous demander d'être
I would like to ask you to be brief, please, in order to give the opportunity to the panelists to answer your questions.
Short comment. It will be short. There's a great need for good quality research. This has been pointed out already. But where good research already exists on digital transformation and the associated processes, structures that have been spoken about, this research needs to be used better. We have poor examples of information and reports and evidence bases that have been built over time, painstaking research that's been made available, and these are not being used to, or not being allowed to influence policy processes that are perhaps becoming vulnerable to the negative side of digital transformation.
Merci.
Now I give the floor to our speakers. There was a very important notice and remark. No one spoke about the multi-stakeholders approach. This is a very important point. This is my question. I ask you to elaborate on this subject. I'm very happy if we have some recommendations through these exchanges in this field or on this point. Alain, please, the floor is yours.
IGF, the Internet Governance Forum. So let's talk about Internet governance. And the multi-stakeholder approach basically says that we need to listen to all the voices. Civil society, governments, researchers, educators, the end users, the internet service providers. They all have different ideas about what should be done. And all these ideas need to be taken into account. That's essentially what the multi-stakeholder approach means.
Thank you, Madame.
Just to reiterate what Brock says, I think that the challenge is not that we don't have, the research and we don't know which are best practices. I mean, if you look at issues around, for instance, the question of regulation, also in terms of, what should actually be offered as zero-rated service. You also look at issues around promotions and pricing versus, just the development of information centers. But I think what is critical is to what extent does research influence the policy that we have or vice versa? And I think what we should actually be having at national level internet governance forums is that conversation around development of the internet and what our policies are actually saying, and just running the parallels with what is available as research. So and I think it's not enough to just to look at it and explore it, but to also, when recommendations are made, are we actually able to implement and to even monitor or refer at the next national IGF? So I find that there's a lack of accountability from the various sectors, whether it's the technical sector, whether it's civil society, making interventions. More often than not, you have duplication of the research. For instance, if you look at the number of researches that we have just around digital rights in the Southern African continent alone, I think on record this year would be about 3 that have been launched. Same conversation, same recommendations, but at what level are we actually implementing at civil society? Are we engaging the technical community? And when we do convene to have an internet governance forum, are we actually reflecting to see the extent to which we have made any progress?
Key question, indeed. Father, please go ahead.
I believe that each stakeholder has an important role to play in what we are envisaging right now. The policymakers are here, but they can't implement things that are being done at grassroots level. I believe that advocacy, training, and other issues which we are looking forward to should be the work of those who are the practitioners who are helping. My colleagues just talked about the research work that have been done. It's good. This is the first start. We might have several ones, but they should be implemented. And the policymakers need to see that these things are implemented and provide support as well. And leave to the practitioners who are on the field to go for training and advocacy sessions. So I believe that each stakeholder has his role, but up to a limit. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, the questions and comments have been very interesting. I wanted to highlight three things. Starting with our moderator question, multi-stakeholder, I would can address everything actually in the society, at least at societal level. It starts with vision and policy. And in many of our countries, the curricula are decided at national level. It's not like in the US, where even in the US, they have their institutional fields where all those private and public university agree on things that need to happen. And when one innovates before the other follows. So there's some homogeneity happening there. But in our African country, most of the time, it's the government, it's the Ministry of Higher Education and Research that decides about curricula. Before changing, I'm in Togo struggling with universities where we don't have anything about digital, whatever, governance or economy or whatever. I'm trying to get those subjects into the curriculum. And I have deans telling me, oh, our priority is maths, physics, chemistry, sorry. I'm mixing French here. So they are like, we do what we have always done. That's what they want to do. And you have to fight to explain to them that the world is moving. The universities that are supposed to be the temple of knowledge need to be at the forefront of these combats. The second point is that yes, policy making is very important. While we need to have champions at policy making level, there are schools and actors, individual actors who may be experimenting new things on the ground. And they may have best cases scenario to show the rest of the society. And, when you have that coming from bottom up, yesterday the keynote speaker talked about top down and bottom up processes. When you have that kind of multi-directional actions, then at some point you have a critical opportunity that will make a social or societal transformation. The last thing I want to say is research. Research is not one thing, one shot or one standalone thing. Yes, these organizations may have done good research thanks to the funding of some donors from outside, etc. But we need to create the ecosystem. We need to have the culture of doing evidence-based policies. For us to have the local culture, the continental culture, the regional culture of evidence-based policy making, we need to have a research ecosystem. We need that ecosystem to be an institution that's there in permanence and has a flow of funding and ideas that's come out and based on the challenges that the society is facing. And then the researcher responds, say, okay, I can propose this kind of research with this method, and we will find out. And last thing, when you do research, when you just do research because you have occasional funding, it's not good, because how does it happen in research? People do research, they publish in journals, and other researchers assess what is published, they can challenge it, they can test it, they can come up with contrary evidence, and that's how knowledge progress. If you just confine the research in one organization with occasional funding, that will not do it.
Thank you. Madam?
Thanks very much, Mawaki. I think just quickly on research, it's also about ensuring that research is not just done by academia in a language that only we understand. And when I say we, because I'm an academic, but also engaging in that research process that includes everybody else who's interested in the subject matter. So that's just my point when it comes to research. So I wanted to respond to the question that was raised around education. What do we need to do to ensure that capacity is built? I think we need to revolutionize education. We need to step away from looking at education in terms of happening in formal spaces. And my example is that I grew up in an environment where smartphones were introduced, and we got smartphones from the UK, and no one knew how to decrypt the system because they were designed for that market. But I found young men and women, well, mainly young men, learning how to decrypt the phone and I might be using the wrong word here, but learning how to allow for me to put my local network and to actually make use of it. They did not go to formal training schools for this. It was peer-to-peer learning. And it was a system where there was an interest and someone had an opportunity and someone sat down with someone and they learned. It was not in a formal classroom. So I think when we think about education, we need to start thinking about other ways of learning. And I know of an example of a coding school in South Africa. It's called We Think Code, if anyone wants to look it up. And what they've done is that they've stripped away the requirements that are needed for people to enter into coding schools. And some of these requirements have been that you've had to have a top grade in mathematics, a top grade in science. But we come from an educational environment where some people don't have access to the good schools that allow you to have that kind of capacity. So what they've done is made sure that if you just have a passion in the subject, you come and you learn through peer-to-peer processes. And it's not a matter of that as you progress, even if you don't get the highest level in the class, you leave with some kind of skill. And that's challenging the current educational system. And I think also another issue that I would like to apologize for completely missing is that when we think about digital transformation, we seem to think of it as an absent of cultural issues. I've been working on research around young women in Tanzania and the use of the internet. And by young women, I mean 15 to 19 and 20 to 24. And what I found was that the 20 to 24-year-olds were saying, I will be participating in the digital economy. And when I have money to buy a smartphone, my parents think that I am getting it from somewhere else. So they take away the device from me. And then with the young women, with the teenagers, it was a matter of that they are not allowed to use the technology because their parents fear activities that they're doing online. So we've talked about digital transformation in terms of people participating in the economy, but I think there is a wider issue around cultural perceptions of this digital transformation. What does it mean when your child has access to the internet? What does it mean when your child is earning more from the digital economy, yet you are still probably in a job that's completely differently defined? So I think this revolution around digital transformation actually has to take into account the cultural ecosystem in which we exist.
Thank you. Since we are arriving to the end of this session, I think that I have the obligation to put two fundamental questions to our speakers, just to come out with a kind of crystallizations in terms of recommendation. The first question is, according to you, what kind of brainstorming do we need on this issue and with what kind of stakeholders? This is the first question. The second one, if you allow me, is to ask you if we had, as African, to identify flagship programs in connection with the issue of digital economy and digital transformation, what would you recommend? Please. Alan? Please.
Okay, let me take a stab at that. The second question was if you have to recommend flagship programs.
No, this is the second one.
Yeah, okay.
The first one is if we had to elaborate or to organize kind of brainstorming on this issue,
okay.
What should we do and what would be this kind of...
Okay.
And essentially, according to you, what should be the stakeholders of such a brainstorming?
I'm not sure that we need some sort of a top-down model of brainstorming. I think there are millions of people in Africa who all have their own ideas, who are all capable of thinking of projects for themselves to do and improving their own life. And so we shouldn't tell them what to do. We should let them choose for themselves what to do, and we should support them. And AfriNIC runs a program called the FIRE program, the Fund for Internet Research and Education. And essentially, we give small grants to projects which are doing good things with the internet, with IT. Empowerment or access to the internet in rural areas, education, lots of good things. And we're not telling them what to do. They're coming to us and saying, I've got this great project and we need some funding.
Thank you. Good to know. Madam?
I would like to make an attempt at that very complicated brainstorming question. I think given that we are in agreement that this is about, just even social impact, I think that I would like to see a brainstorming session around the way that this transformation has changed citizenship on the African continent in terms of political participation, in terms of, the economy, and also in terms of preservation of, our indigenous language or local content production, because I think that we are a totally different continent than we were 20 years ago. We've seen quite a number of social media revolutions. We've seen the media changing. We've seen the way we transact changing as well. So I think that the conversation should be broader than technical. I think it should explore social impact and how that allows us as citizens to exercise our democratic rights. Because I think the tendency is once we're done with casting a vote, usually, we cease being citizens. And in terms of what would be the flagship, I think
what kind of flagship?
What kind of flagship? Well, I don't know what that means, but I think it should ordinarily be around our exercise of our rights as citizens in terms of our rights to access, information, the economy itself.
Thank you. Please.
I'm coming from the civil society organization, and I believe that all stakeholders should be gathered together. And then we have a brainstorming on what is a way forward. How do we include the technical part and the practitioner part? So once this is done, I believe that we need to embark on advocacy, and advocacy reaching the hard to reach population. For example, those homestay mothers who are living in rural regions, I believe that these people should be targeted so that they can empower their kids to better internet usage. So there are various flagship events that can be organized. Thank you.
Thank you. Madame?
I really thought I was going to have the last word. Um, I think when it comes to what kind of brainstorming that's needed, I think we need a diverse multi-stakeholder approach and multi-dimensional approach as mentioned by Mawaki. And I think we need to come as the resources that we have. So it would be great to have private sector with all their money at the table, research with their research at the table, civil society with their advocacy at the table. And I think that's the best way that we can come up with something that is workable. And we need to take into account at different levels, at national level, local level, at global level, and to make sure that there's some communication going across all directions. I think also once this brainstorming is done, we need to make sure that we've got some form of accountability, as has been mentioned, and evaluation mechanisms to make sure that we're not just having a talk shop and we're not just gathering around and throwing our money everywhere. And I think from there, when it comes to the flagship program, I think I'm not going to suggest a flagship program, but I do believe that if you do have such a brainstorming session, you can actually come out with several flagship programs that can address the challenges that are required at different levels. We don't need to come up with something that can be implemented all over the country. If we can do that, that's great. But different communities have different needs. So I think if we can start with flagship, start small, and we can address the digital transformation issue.
Thank you.
Yes. I really believe in the ingenuity of people. I'm not worried about people when given the right environment to do what they need to do in order to get ahead. That's not where the problem lies from my perspective. So that's why I keep insisting on policy making. There was a question regarding infrastructure, which we didn't address. For having the right infrastructure and the right basis for all those activities, economic activities, education, and all that to emerge and to take place, you need the policymaker to understand the goods of having those infrastructure. Do you realize that some policymakers think that internet is just about allowing people to be on Facebook and send WhatsApp chats? Those policymakers, they cannot give you the infrastructure you need to develop an economy, a digital economy. So that's where I think the rubber hits the road, right? They say we need to create a process where policymakers can be their awareness can be raised, can be trained or informed about what is it exactly having a digital economy, and maybe a review process, just like we have at the UN Human Rights Council, have periodical review process about digital economy or digital transformation. If after an awareness workshop, training, or whatever to policymakers, a couple of months or 1 year, 2 years maximum later, every country has to sit for their review and see what they have done with what has been brought to them during that workshop. And if, again, we support research at the regional level, at least, or continental level, then those the output of those of that research effort will be bring into that kind of setting to open up the mind of the policymakers so that they can lay out the right infrastructure, and then the people, whether it's the application developers, whether it's a large organization trying to develop email, e-commerce, and things like that, they can do, everyone at their level, they can do what they need to be done. what they need to do.
Thank you. Thank you all for these answers to these two questions. The questions, these answers are fundamental for the future. Unfortunately, we have no one from the governments with us in the panel. That's why, in fact, I have asked for more brainstorming, because we have all to be included in such a debate. I am quite sure that we are going to have better discussions in the future, but already I have to thank someone in the room that said that the digital transformation is under process already. It is not something that we have to plan for. It is already here, and we have to deal with it with the best means, with the best reactivity, with the best inclusion. This is a whole program by itself. So let's try as a community, and probably as a community gathered here in the African IGF, to start this kind of brainstorming, to start identifying flagship programs, just to start working. But I'm sure that the process of digital transformation will create and generate by itself necessary actions for the future. Because digital transformation is not just ideas, it is also a matter of action. Let me thank you for your presentations and contribution. Let me thank the floor